All right. Hi, everybody. So, this could be the first time I'm going to be doing a patch review for myself off stream, and it's going to be for patch 0.72. Just going to talk about a couple of things here, maybe just scroll through some of the more important things in my personal opinion about this patch, and maybe I'll discuss a couple things as well, as maybe some of the things that I like about the patch, some of the things I also don't like about the patch, and a couple of thoughts going forward. I do want to do a bit more of a comprehensive kind of overview of the patch, but I'm not exactly sure what I want the format for these to be starting from now on, so let's just get started here real quick. So, first of all, of course, introduction of patch 0.72 means that we're going to start getting Tazia into Eternal Return. Of course, that means we're going to have about a week or so before we're going to be able to play her in Ranked. And I'm kind of hoping that I could eventually start doing some highlight videos for characters in and of themselves, because let's be real here. If you've already read the patch notes, Tazia is not a simple character to describe as of right now. So maybe I'll do a little bit more of an in-depth video in regards to how Tazia is supposed to work as soon as she actually releases in the game. I'm recording this right now, right as the maintenance is already going. So I'm gonna figure out how Tazia works first, and then maybe I'll see if I can do a video on how she physically functions. I tried reading what she does. No. I'm gonna just need to straight up play, I think, Tazia to figure out how she works, so see if I can upload a separate video on that one. So let's just kind of skip through the Tazia stuff for now real fast. A couple of really sick skins coming through. Of course, Masquerade Jenny, that's going to be an awesome skin, just looking at the splash out, of course, as well as Luxury Masquerade Daniel. Both amazing skins that we already got kind of a little bit of a teaser for during the Season 7 dev stream, and now we're finally going to have it in games. So cool stuff over there. And then a new event, kind of, where we're going to be able to buy a mysterious data. I kind of thought this was pretty cool. It's only going to be 200 MP. So if you have any content creators that you were able to get event MP from, you should be able to get any skin from an uncommon, rare, as well as an epic. So this is a pretty cool event. I definitely highly suggest you guys buy one of these if you guys can. Only one purchase per account, of course, so just make sure you guys can grab it whenever you can. Also, on that note, I have quite a bit of event MP myself that I could give away to people as well, since I'm a Eternal Return partner. So I'm going to add those down to the comments below. I'll add about 5 codes this time around. I'll gauge the interest there and then see how it looks like. And of course, if it's only one use per account, and if you've already gotten your code from other content creators this month and you are unable to use it, come back next month and I'll see if I can give out some more codes then as well. So have fun. Again, the mysterious data, pretty cool event, so make sure you guys take advantage of it if you definitely can. And back to the video. A big thing here. This is one of the big points that I wanted to mention. Now, Kathy has dual swords. For anyone who's been kind of keeping track of the, I believe, YouTube channels for Eternal Return recently, they have been uploading shorts recently about how Kathy's been using dual swords, and a lot of people were wondering, well, is this just more of a joke? Is this actually going to happen? Yeah, it actually happened. There were some people talking about how Kathy was originally supposed to have dual sword, and I do remember talks about it a long time ago when Kathy first came out, but it hasn't been the case until now. So we're finally going to start having Kathy using dual swords in Eternal Return, and we do have a lot of numbers here. I think the numbers as of right now looks relatively okay. The only thing I'm worried about right now is what kind of build she's going to be able to run. There's been a lot of changes in regards to how her empowered auto attack works in this patch. We'll kind of go over that in this video as well real quick. As soon as we get to that Kathy section. But is she going to be running an auto attack focus build for dual sword, or is she going to be running amp? If she is going to be running amp, then is Asura the only option that she has until they start adding more into the fray, or is she going to start running some of the maybe attack speed weapons and then just kind of adding some more amp items into the mix? I'm not entirely sure. That was what I was kind of wondering as of right now as soon as I saw this. But for now, all we can say is that Kathy now has dual swords. Let's continue down on the list. Some additional cool stuff, some quality of life things, which of course has been pretty good, I will say, for the most part when it comes to Eternal Return. So cool things there. any other ones that are kind of important. This is just a little bit of quality of life to make things easier to see in regards to orders. Rank decay, of course, if you guys have been checking the announcements on the official Eternal Return website as well, they have said that during the Season 7 extension, your rank will not decay if you are Diamond and above until the season is over. So that's cool stuff there. And a couple of patch change thoughts and processes and directions. This is a pretty good TLDR, by the way, of what Nimble Neuron wants to kind of do with this patch. So, or even patches down the road. This is just kind of like a dev note that they always add to patches nowadays, which is actually really good. So let's take a look at it really quickly. All right. This link will usually take you to a set of stats that you're able to look at, and these are the stats that Nimble Neuron looks at specifically for the patch that they posted for. So if you guys want to take a look at this, absolutely go for it. I'm not exactly a stats kind of person. It's like the last point of kind of note that I always do when it comes to characters. So maybe if you guys want me to talk about stats, I can definitely do that in another video. But for now, we'll just take a look at what the numbers are looking like here. 2 new epic weapon releases in Poison Crossbow as well as Instant Camera. We can talk about this as soon as we get down to the bottom, just adding more variety in regards to what kind of weapons are available for each specific archetype, and you can see that right here. In the longer run, we want to make sure that there are at least 2 of each weapon choices for skill amp as well as basic attack builds, and this is exactly what they are doing with this edition for the 2 weapons. Builds with a focus on critical strikes have been doing well, and this is mainly because they've been adding a lot of very big transition items into late game. Of course, you have stuff like Shield of Kings, you have Alexander, Fallen Pegasus has been in the game for a while, of course, and Dice of Destiny. So they're going to start nerfing the overall damage in regards to critical damage in the late game. We'll take a look at what they do specifically to Alexander, for example, when we get to the item sections. Everything else, not too bad. So love shots, effectively when somebody kind of kills, 2 people kind of take out each other at the same time. They don't exactly want that happening too often since the number of that happening has been rising as of late. So they're going to reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to get the executioner bonus, which is basically when you kill somebody, you get a certain amount of HP back. That was originally implemented to try to kind of prevent third partying, but for now, this is going to be a countermeasure to the love shots. Character price reductions, of course, that's fine. Tia getting a nerf overall in regards to damage, which is alright. She's definitely heavily punished, I think, when it comes to missing skills, but if we do land skills on her, she is really, really strong right now. So I think her damage number is getting nerfed a little bit here in regards to the base damage is actually completely alright. And a dash of color being a little bit more kind of supplemented with damage as well to kind of support the aggressive playstyles with a dash of color. I really like the changes of this patch for Tia. It's just, I don't know if the numbers are entirely fair as of right now. We'll of course have to see that when the maintenance actually finishes. Let's see here. Laura getting nerfed a little bit, of course. Laura has always been a character that's been problematic in regards to the DPS output, as well as allowing herself to be able to use her ultimate twice in one specific fight if you land a calling card and then pop it. So I do like what they're doing here with Laura as well. Lennox getting a little bit of a buff for herself, just in the early stages of the game. She's been doing really well, I think, in the mid to late game for herself, but kind of struggles in the early phases where she wants to be starting to look for contestations, for objectives, and go for some of the more important ones, like even Tree of Life items. So a little bit of buffs coming in towards Lennox over there, buffs to Leon on his shield. Luke will also be getting some buffs here on his own in regards to damage, and this kind of forces him to make sure that he's actively using skills against enemy characters and not only using specifically dirty work on cameras. And Pressure Washer will also get a little bit of skill amp nerf here because Nimble Neuron thought the amplification scaling was a little bit too high. So, cool stuff over there. Alright, Rio is going to get a buff here, just a small buff in regards to damage. Mai will also be getting a bit more of a shield if she uses Catwalk on an enemy. And that's thankfully due to the fact that Mai's have been building a lot of skill amp builds nowadays. They've transitioned from the right-click auto style builds to the amp builds. So they're going to give a little bit of shield depending on the amount of amp that you have. Marcus is also getting a little bit of a buff here. Now, when it comes to Marcus, this is a character that I've always talked about how after a certain point, there's the character's, what is it, the camel's back is going to be broken eventually when it comes to Marcus. And I think we've reached a point where the camel's back hasn't exactly been broken, but he's definitely a strong character. Very consistent ways of being able to access the backline, especially with his ultimate, and then knocking them back, crowd controls all over the place. So recently, Nimble Neuron nerfed Marcus, but they're going to revert a little bit of that and give him a little bit more power in regard to the front-loaded damage on his end. Is this a good patch? I'll definitely have to see. I still think that there's a lot of things wrong with Marcus right now, especially in regards to being able to use those skills to get access to somebody, especially in solos as well. But he's definitely a character a little bit more kind of focused towards team mode, so this is a pretty decent buff in regards to Marcus right now. So cool. Magnus, next up, 17 versus 1, getting a little bit of additional amplification scaling. Essentially, Nimble Neuron is just giving a little bit more consistent damage over on the side of Magnus, so that is all this patch does for him. Alright, let's continue on here. Shukai, next up, getting a bit of buffs. This is just a little buff to allow him to transition a little bit more smoothly into his late game section. Of course, as you can see here, he gains stacks a bit better as soon as he hits level, level 5 and level 9. So you can definitely take advantage of this and allow him to get to that late game section in which you're going to get a bit of a buff as well. His ultimate cooldown going to be way better as soon as you hit that level 11 mark compared to before. So definitely kind of overloading his late game damage. I don't know if that's a great idea right now, but I do know that Shukai's have been struggling a little bit in regards to being able to utilize his full kit, especially during the late game portion. So I think it's too big of a buff myself, especially considering the fact that they're also buffing the skill amp for the dagger as well as the amp scaling for the spear. We'll of course have to see when the patch actually comes through. Shoichi getting a little bit of buff on himself as well, damage in exchange for a little bit of squishiness. Sua will also get a little bit of nerf here. She has been doing a massive amount of damage recently, so this is definitely something that is pretty understandable in regards to that. Aya will also be getting a little bit of a buff here as well. So Pistol Aya has been a character that has been doing amazing almost across the board, especially in the KR region right now. So as you can see, a little bit of kind of adjustments in regards to the damage as well as the damage output that Aya is going to overall have. Steady shot, definitely going to be a little bit buffed here, I think, as well. Overall, I say that Pistol Aya has been seeing some success over on the KR side, but in general, Aya as a whole, in my opinion, has been somewhat struggling here. So these small buffs happening in regards to the base damage as well as the cooldown for the double shot here, and a little bit of a nerf on the amp scaling in general. I think this is going to allow Aya to be a lot more kind of effective in the early stages of the game, where she really heavily relies on snowballing in a lot of these cases. So this should be pretty alright, I think, in the long run. A little bit of smoothness buff for Isol. Isaac also getting a little bit of smoothness buff for himself. Aiden, yet again, feeling KR's wrath and is going to get nerfed here again. Aiden in general has been a character that internationally has been pretty disliked for quite a while now, considering the fact that he is, a character that you would imagine is supposed to be absurdly aggressive, and he definitely can be. But compared to his heydays a long time ago during, I believe it was like seasons 5 or 6, where he was super, super aggressive and people like Locke were playing him in the international regions just for that reason, he is not that anymore. He likes to kind of run low, scale into the late game, and at the end of the game become a massive, massive powerhouse, and that's the reason why he's been having such a high win rate, because a lot of KR players can utilize his full kit all the way at the end game to make sure that they can take away the win, even if they haven't been having the greatest of stats in regards to overall kills, which might just be supplemented by some of those players that are just absolutely cracked on this character. So a lot of nerfs happening across the board here, some damage distribution across the board for Aiden as well. I think this is a decent way to nerf Aiden, but of course people are going to be complaining about this one. This is a massive amount of massive number of nerfs happening to Aiden at the same time. So we'll of course definitely have to keep track of how Aiden does, especially on the KR region. William also going to get nerfed here. He's been doing really well. His burst damage, absolutely massive. Consistency is the name of the game when it comes to William, and he definitely has that. Zero point 0.2 nerf to attack power per level isn't really going to kill him, so that will be completely okay to William. For Yuki as well, Dual Sword Yuki has been overly performing. Of course, that character is one of those characters where I always say he is definitely one of the more easier characters to play across the board. And Dual Sword really supplements that kind of gameplay, especially in the international regions where we are going to be aggressive, where we are looking for these kills early on. Of course, the crit Dual Sword builds for Yuki has been always a problem for a very, very long time, and they're trying to balance that as much as possible. And to do that, they're going to nerf the damage on the Dashing Gentleman a little bit here, nerf a little bit of attack power on Yuki as a general, but supplement the amount of damage being lost from the basic attack power and amplifying the amount of basic attack damage that Two-Handed Sword gets instead. I think it's okay. Is it really gonna solve Yuki? I don't think so. Because Diamond Shard just really makes Dual Sword Yuki very, very difficult to deal with for a lot of different characters. But at least this is definitely a start. 11 also getting a little bit of nerfs here. No, not exactly a nerf. A little bit of power adjustment for the early stages. They getting distributed a little bit more towards the late game. This is completely fine. Jaggy as well, getting a little bit of nerfs in regards to the dagger mastery for basic attack damage and a little bit of attack speed for Two-Handed Sword. This is perfectly fine as well. Pretty standard that you see where a certain weapon gets a little bit nerfed because they've been overused and their stats are amazing. Just to supplement something else that it maybe isn't doing too well in the current meta. Jenny will be getting a little bit of additional damage on her end as well. Carla, now this is one of the points that I wanted to make. This is a way to nerf Carla that I've been asking for a very, very long time. I believe it was 0.69 or it was 0.68 where they increased a delay for how salvage pulled. As you can see here, as soon as she presses W, there's like a half second before it gets pulled back. I talked a lot about this on my stream. And now they're changing it so that it's almost near instant. A little bit of a delay compared to before, but this is way, way better in regards to it. And to supplement this, they're going to nerf her damage a little bit across the board, which is completely fine. Carla is a character that had a lot of damage. I always said that she was borderline S tier if you knew how to play her, and that was definitely true. So I like the way that they're changing Carla here. Now, is this going to mean a lot of big things in the future? I actually definitely think it will because we have not ERM, the Season 7 finals coming up in Korea very soon this weekend. And there are some prominent players there that could definitely play the Carla, especially with this patch too. So definitely excited to see this maybe make an impact in the season finals. And if it does, then Carla is back, baby. Congratulations. Kathy, of course, we talked about this. Now, this is the change that I was talking about when it comes to the enhanced basic attack when using a dagger, right? And now for dual swords, it's going to get 1.6 times damage. So this is the part where I'm like, is that going to be a little bit more of an amplification focus? Or is that going to be a bit more of the attack speed focus? But we'll have to see what Kathy players kind of come up with as soon as the patch itself goes live. And a little bit of a nerf across the board. Kathy's still a very big problem when it comes to the damage output, especially on the KR side of things. And even international regions as well. There's been quite a lot of really good international Kathy players, so that's why the nerf over onto amputation is definitely happening here. Chloe, this just straight up means I believe that Nina will also take some armor penetration when you have armor penetration and you apply it to Nina. So a little bit of a nerf over onto Chloe here. Fiora, again, as similarly to Jackie earlier, they're just going to be getting a little bit of weapon kind of diversity in regards to what is going to be used and not. So cool things. Piolo getting a little bit buffed. Now, I actually tweeted about this earlier today, and I don't know if it's a good idea for him to get buffs like this in regards to damage. And there is one specific reason why, and I'll talk about this later in the patch, because there's an item that he's been utilizing very well that also got massively buffed during this patch as well. I don't know if giving him damage buffs at this point in the game is actually really good, because I actually have been seeing a lot of PLOs be successful in their games overall. A very solid front line, somebody that can kind of sustain throughout the fights early on as well. I don't exactly know if this is going to be a good way to buff Piolo. He might definitely be strong during 0.72. Heart also getting a little bit of a nerf here. Heart's been getting a lot of buffs recently because her stats in general have not been doing amazing. But you know, sometimes Nimble likes to over buff things and they have to deal with the after effects. This is them dealing with the after effects. Overdrive going to be nerfed pretty massively here, and the reason why Overdrive is getting nerfed is because when you first proc Overdrive and then you hit somebody with any of your guitar strings, right? So your Q, your E, your auto attack, their defense is shredded, and that's the big moment where Heart really likes to go for the damage output. So lowering this, nerfing this is really going to make it difficult for Hearts to find more of those opportunities and have to watch out for when she physically procs the skill to start her actual damage output window. So that's a pretty decent nerf there to Heart. Haze will actually, I think, get a buff. Again, I'm not entirely sure what Nimble Neuron has with Haze. This is a character that I've been consistently saying should not really be getting buffs. For the shotgun, it's just simply going to be kind of like a smoothness kind of thing for this character. But for SMGs, that is definitely a buff. I'm looking at this specifically here. Each hit is treated as individual damage. Is that going to affect stuff like the sports watch, maybe, where she's going to continuously be able to stack up the circulation and just like instantly get max amount of stats out of it? I'm not entirely sure as of right now, but this is definitely a buff going over onto Haze as well as a smoothness thing. She's definitely a strong character, in my personal opinion. A lot of people will still kind of get back to me on that because I've been talking about how Haze has been a very strong character near her release to begin with, and we're already like 3 or 4 patches down the road. So I don't know entirely about this one. Hey, still going to be extremely strong in certain game modes, and even in solos, she's going to be very adept at dealing with a lot of things now as well. Hyunwoo will also be getting a little bit of a nerf overall here, but kind of supplementing that with damage numbers on Haymaker. Of course, you can see skill amp going for 255 to 285 when fully charged up. Okay, they don't want him to rat, they want him to do damage. He already does quite a lot of damage in my opinion, almost getting unpunished for a lot of things here. And they're saying that they're toning down heavy knee pads, which, I mean, okay, I can definitely see it because he can use it to get away after doing his initial fights. But I think Hyunwoo's one of those characters where it's very difficult to punish him because he has that one big source of crowd control that if you mess up just a single time in a fight, he will take advantage of you. And there's a lot of animation canceling over on the side of Hyunwoo, especially when he's playing glove, that he will most likely out DPS you, especially in the early stages of the fight. And if he's running something like Brazil Gauntlet as well, if he's animation canceling things, he's definitely going to get that vigor stacked up extremely, extremely fast. So you got to be careful fighting around Hyunwoo. Hyejin also going to get nerfed a little bit here overall too. 5 Omens, the uptime is going to be down. Of course, this doesn't exactly matter because at least for Hyejin, her ultimate kind of the cooldown for it starts at the beginning, the moment she procs it, so that's okay here. But a little bit of a attack speed nerf means that crit builds for her bow versions are going to struggle a little bit. Alright, weapons. Just a couple of things here. There's nothing really, I think, too big to mention except for a very, very few. So I'm going to just like slowly but surely scroll through here. Of course, if you guys want to take a look at this patch note yourself, I'll include the link to the patch note itself down in the comments below. But let's take a look at this. The poison crossbow. So it's going to be made out of a steel bow and a poison. And of course, if you look at the poison here, you're like, skill amp builds. And you're absolutely right. I mentioned this earlier, but it's going to be skill amp 38 for base, and per level it's going to be 2. Also has the healing reduction. This is kind of predictable with the poison as well. So cool, cool beans. Again, a new kind of way to do amplification versions of the crossbow. So you're thinking of characters, I guess, like Carla that might want to run this. Although who the heck knows, maybe Ballista is still better. Or maybe even for characters like the Nadine, does she want to go crossbow? And if she wants to go amp, she's not only solely reliant on Ballista anymore, she's also going to have access to the poison crossbow as well. So cool stuff coming out there for crossbows. Let's take a look. Continuing down the list, Cerberus getting a massive buff here. 3 attack power down and then an addition of 25% attack speed. Cerberus in general, I feel like, is a weapon that Nimble Neuron has never been able to identify what they want to do with this weapon, and I still think that's a little bit of a case, although they've kind of found what they do want to do with it. They just haven't found exactly where this weapon needs to be at right now. So in substitution for losing 3 attack power here, 25% attack speed. Now, Cerberus is a force core item, and as soon as you transition into the Cerberus, of course, you are kind of lacking in the attack speed if you were running Vibrant and Chaku. This 25% attack speed is massive. I would not be surprised if this gets nerfed. Like sometime in the future, whether it's immediate or down the road, this is very huge, and the accessibility to Cerberus is not that bad right now. Because to begin with, again, I'll be doing a video for Dial In for a Ranter in a couple of bits here, but she likes to rat nowadays. So Force Core, if you want to go for it and upgrade your weapon up into a Cerberus by, whether you try to dice roll the Omega or even go for the console call, you can get Cerberus relatively consistently if you do decide to go down that route. So huge buff over onto Cerberus there. Anything else? Just looking down the list. Instant Camera, again, another one of those new weapons added to give more variety in regards to playstyles for other characters. Of course, this is a little bit more focused onto Martina as well as Nathapon. Just a bit of skill amplification that you're going to be getting off of this weapon, as well as a little bit of armor penetration, which is kind of cool. I don't know if this is going to be entirely useful, I think, for Nathapon or Martina, because they kind of scale really well off of the numbers itself for skill amp. And if there is armor penetration, of course, that's going to be really good for these characters that like to do big bursts of damage. I just don't know entirely what the effect is going to be until I physically see it in the game. So at least we do know that there are additional options for camera players, so cool things there. And anything else? Now, okay, so I talked earlier about the Piolo, and this right here is the big reason that I don't think buffing his damage is actually a good idea. Piolo has been abusing, in my opinion, Amazonas armor very well in the recent patches. Being able to utilize that, especially in the meta where skill amplification characters have been absurdly strong recently and definitely overused in the recent meta, Piolo can use this item piece extremely well, and 20 max HP is actually a massive buff when it comes to Amazonas armor, especially when it's an item that also gives you additional sustainability on the side too. So this buff right here is the reason why it's a little bit scary for me to see Piolo getting buffed that much in this patch, but of course we'll see how that goes as soon as the live servers come through and what the numbers on Piolo is going to look like. Anything else? Sports Watch. Sheath Shah Jahan getting a 1% armor penetration. I think Ekion is going to be able to make use of something like this very well, so cool beans there. This is the change I mentioned earlier when it came to the dev stream notes. Alexander is going to get its 5% crit damage removed and supplemented with 3% crit rate instead. And this is one of those ways where Nimble Neurons, like, in the later portions of the game, if people do decide to stick with crit, for example, very early on and even use it at the late game, they're kind of a little bit worried about the overall damage that crit can do. And with Alexander being an item that you can get with Tree of Life early on, of course, you're not just going to be benefiting off of the additional damage you're going to be doing off of Alexander, but also the increased movement speed. So the utilization of Alexander was very high for a lot of players, and that's why they're nerfing this, especially for the latter portions of the game as well. Anything else? They talked about kind of some traps as well over on Deathstream. Nothing too important. Heavy knee pads also getting nerfed. We saw that over on the Hyunu side. Just a little bit of less movement speed when you physically pop the shield. And a bunch of mode balancing. And the rest of it is going to be Cobalt changes, which I really don't want to specifically be talking about here. I will mention just one big thing in regards to the team modes damage adjustments. Massive nerfs over onto Carla, especially for duos and squads for the damage dealt. And this is definitely going to hurt, especially when she also received damage nerfs in this patch in general, but it just means that her utilization as well as her physical capabilities, being an actual character that can do what she wants to do, this is a little bit righteous in regards to her damage on team modes. Now, is it justified? I don't know, 6% seems quite massive for a character like Carla who still needs to play around a lot of her harpoons. But of course, we'll see whether or not this is going to be a big deal, especially in the KR scene where people do indeed play Carla over on team modes quite often nowadays. Those Carla one tricks over there in KR doing some massive work with this character, so we'll see whether or not this is a big deal when it comes down to it. And everything else is pretty standard. Again, Cobalt changes as well. If you guys want to read up on that, absolutely go ahead. But that is pretty much my thoughts overall on the patch for 0.72. Now, I've been giving myself a lot of kind of like these numerical, numerical judgments in regards to what I think the patch looked like out of 10. If I had to kind of sit down here and think about what I would give this patch, I think a solid maybe like 6 or a 7 would actually suffice. A lot of very decent changes, I think, in this patch. And of course, there's always going to be those specific outliers where we're going to be like, oh, why are they doing that? I don't see too many of them in here. Although a couple of them are pretty big. So overall, I think it's a nice patch in my opinion. There's definitely going to be some very strong characters in 0.72. Of course, again, we're going to have to see whether or not that's actually going to come to fruition in when the patch actually comes live in a couple of hours here for me. And especially for the season finals that's going to be happening this weekend as well. What are these changes really going to make and change for the players that are going to be playing in that tournament, if they're even going to be playing on the 0.72 patch to begin with? And of course, Tazi is going to be banned from that tournament, but that also means that if we are playing on 0.72, Isaac is going to be available for that tournament. So a lot of big factors that can kind of play into the Season 7 finals as well. But yeah, that is going to be the end of at least the patch review on my end. Again, I don't exactly know where I'm going to be going with this one. I might just do a similar format here, not too much editing, just talk about the patch as soon as I can. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Of course, let me know what you guys think about 0.72 down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time for whatever video I upload.